Welcome, friends. I'm so glad you're here today, and welcome from all of us at He Is Risen Ministries. Your support by subscribing and giving a thumbs up helps us keep creating videos that inspire and equip those seeking a deeper walk with the Lord. Thank you for being part of this journey. Today we're talking about a question a lot of new believers and Gen Z viewers bring up. Why does the Bible say women should be silent or submit if men and women are equal? That's an honest question, and it deserves a calm, simple, and thoughtful answer. So let's walk through it together. The verses most people point to are places like 1 Corinthians 14:34-35, where Paul talks about women being silent in church, and Ephesians 5:22-25, where Paul talks about wives submitting to husbands. If you read those verses alone without background, they can feel confusing or even unfair. But when you look at the whole picture, what the early church was like, what Paul was actually dealing with, and what the culture around them looked like, things start to make a lot more sense. In the first century, the gatherings of believers were often lively, unstructured, and full of questions. Many new believers were meeting in homes. People were learning together for the first time. And in cities like Corinth, the church services could get pretty chaotic. Paul actually says earlier in that same chapter that things were getting disorderly. People were interrupting. Prophets were speaking over each other. Tongues were being used without interpretation. It was loud. It was confusing. And nobody could follow what was happening. So when Paul gets to the part about women being silent, he's not suddenly changing direction or creating a new rule. He's continuing the same thought he's been building all along. Everything should be done in a fitting and orderly way. There are scriptures that support this. Just a few verses earlier, Paul says, "If anyone speaks in a tongue, let there be only 2 or 3, and each in turn." Then he says, if a revelation is made to someone else, the first person should stop speaking. He tells prophets to take turns. He tells everyone to avoid confusion. So when he addresses women, he's speaking into that same theme of restoring order so the church can learn peacefully. There's also extra-biblical historical evidence that helps us understand what was going on. Ancient writers from that time, Jewish, Greek, and Roman, talk about how most women in that era had very little access to formal education. Many weren't taught to read. Public discussions were usually limited to men. So when Christianity opened its doors and welcomed men and women to learn together, it created a brand new kind of space. Women who had never been invited into theological conversation were suddenly part of it. Writers like Josephus and Philo describe how women in the ancient world weren't usually included in public debate. Early church writers like Clement of Alexandria and Tertullian mention how church leaders sometimes struggled with disorder during gatherings because so many people, men and women, were talking over one another. This lines up with what Paul was addressing. He wasn't trying to silence women because of their gender. He was trying to calm down an environment that had become noisy and confusing. Think of it like a classroom today. If everyone starts talking at once, the teacher isn't going to say, "Only the boys can talk." Instead, the teacher will say, "Let's raise our hands," or "Hold your questions for a moment." The goal isn't to silence anyone. The goal is to make sure learning can actually happen. Paul's heart was the same. He wanted everyone to learn, everyone to grow, everyone to understand what God was saying. And in a church service that had become disorderly, the only way to make that happen was to bring some structure to the moment. Now let's talk about Ephesians 5 for a minute. That word submit can feel heavy if we read it with modern ears. But Paul begins that entire section by saying, "Submit to one another." He sets the tone right there. This is about mutual humility, not domination. When he talks to wives, he's encouraging unity. When he talks to husbands, he tells them to love as Christ loved the church, meaning love with sacrifice, gentleness, and honor. This is not a hierarchy of value. It's a picture of teamwork. Think of a duo working on a creative project. Sometimes one person leads the brainstorming. Sometimes the other leads the execution. It's not about who's better. It's about working together in a way that brings out the best in both. And when you look at the whole Bible, you see women leading, teaching, and shaping the story of God's people. Deborah led a nation. Priscilla taught alongside her husband. Phoebe carried Paul's letter to the Romans, a role that required understanding and explaining the message. Junia was noted among the apostles. Lydia opened her home and helped launch a church. Mary Magdalene was the first to proclaim the resurrection. So what does all this mean for us today? It means the Bible never teaches that women are less important, less intelligent, or less called by God. In fact, the entire story of Scripture pushes in the opposite direction. It means Paul's words about silence were about restoring order, not restricting calling. And it means the heart of God has always been for men and women to serve side by side, each using their gifts. Let's make it real for a moment. Imagine you're in a group chat with 20 people. Everyone's typing at once. Notifications are exploding. It gets so chaotic that nobody knows what's being said. What happens? Someone usually says, "Hold on, one at a time." They're not trying to shut anyone down. They're trying to make sure communication stays clear. Or imagine being in a relationship where both people only push their own opinions. That doesn't build anything. But when both people choose humility, when both choose to put the other first, that relationship becomes stronger and healthier. That's the kind of mutual love Paul was pointing toward. So here's the encouragement today. Don't let confusing passages make you doubt your worth. If you're a woman, your voice matters deeply to God. Your insight matters. Your leadership matters. Your calling matters. If you're a man, your strength, humility, and willingness to serve matter too. And for all of us, the challenge is simple. Let's build relationships and communities that reflect the gentle, self-giving love of Jesus. As we wrap up, take a moment and ask yourself, where can I bring more humility into my relationships? Where can I listen better? Where can I help bring order, peace, or understanding into a space that feels chaotic? Those small choices can make a big difference. Thank you for spending this time with me today. It truly means so much. If you found this helpful, don't forget to like the video and subscribe. It really helps us continue creating content that strengthens and encourages your walk with the Lord. Got a question you'd like us to explore in a future video? Drop it in the comments below. We'd love to hear from you. For now, rest in the knowledge that the one who loved you first has already prepared a place for you in his eternal family, and may his voice ring clearly and powerfully this very day.